Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Doug Backinger from Caster Concepts, and you are listening to the New Warehouse podcast. And today's safety tip is if you are suffering from injuries where people are getting their feet ran over by your carts or dollies, you can fix that by using a feature on your casters called a toe guard.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Businesses are retooling fulfillment operations, from warehouses to omnichannel, to meet new demand amid unprecedented labor shortages. 3PLs, retailers, B2B distributors, and others are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems to adapt and scale. 6 River Systems Fulfillment Execution System is an integrated solution that combines intelligent, cloud-based software and automation, including its autonomous mobile robot, AMR, Chuck. No costly or disruptive infrastructure changes, fast and easy associate training, and integrations with other warehouse execution solutions allow operations to meet labor challenges, increase efficiency, and enhance customer engagement. Go to www.6river.com to learn more. Go to www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And today we are going to be rolling along on the podcast because we are going to be talking about casters. Specifically, we're going to be joined by Doug Backinger, who is the VP of Sales at Caster Concepts. And we're going to be talking about casters, which are wheels, and I'm sure Doug is going to give us a little more information on that and detailed information, but we're going to talk about them from a kind of a safety and a productivity standpoint and how they can help your organization to save some costs and also help your employees be a little more safer in the workplace as well. So, Doug, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Kevin. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely happy to have you on. Happy to talk a little bit more about casters because I think there's a lot of things that are somewhat unknown, I guess, to the everyday Joe. I guess they're just a wheel, but there's a lot more that can go into them, and I think you're going to give us some insight on that. So why don't you give us a little background on Caster Concepts and what it is that you guys do before we get into some further detail here?
Sure. And I'll say to your point about casters and people not really thinking about them or knowing about them, certainly when I entered this field 17 years ago, I had kind of knew what a caster was, but right. I had no idea what I was getting myself into in terms of, just the variability and really just like the technical aspects of a caster and what really goes into it to help move, a lot of these manufacturing companies, help them move stuff around their facilities. Like it's actually been a really interesting field technically. Mm-hmm. So Caster Concepts, we're located in Albion, Michigan, which is like South Central Michigan. Okay. Been around now 37 years. Okay. So we're a family-owned business, just over 100 employees. And we really specialize in, custom heavy-duty casters, applications where the kind of the tough applications, the one-offs, where other people really haven't figured out a way to, get the right levels of productivity or even durability, in the material handling systems.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting space, and it's pretty remarkable. I think when you think about this thing that's somewhat, I guess, simple to just average passerby, I guess, just a wheel and a cart or something of that nature to make it go. But there's a lot of complexities as you kind of mentioned in there. But I want to talk a little bit about the perceptions of casters before we kind of get a little more into the detail and the engineering of certain casters. So there's a perception, I guess, that certain amount of weight can be carried for casters, and you want to tell us a little bit about that perception and kind of how maybe a lot of people may be in the wrong mindset about it, just how much weight they can actually move on a set of casters.
Sure. So I'd say over the last decade, we've really seen a push from manufacturers to improve ergonomics.
Right.
Just kind of all throughout their manufacturing process. And one of those main processes is, moving carts and dollies around their facilities. So there were push force limits developed by, there was a guy named Snook, and it was in conjunction with Liberty Mutual. So they have these like Snook tables that essentially lay out the risk of pushing certain loads, a certain number of times a day at certain heights. And those tables are still used quite prevalently in the industry to determine, what's safe for an application for somebody to move, cart or dolly throughout the day. So typically what we see is, there's a limit for like starting push force.
Okay.
Most limits are somewhere they're usually under 50 pounds, and they tend to be in the 40 to 45 pound range for starting push force. And typically, with, I'd say kind of old caster technology or standard caster technology, that's pretty much limited you to moving somewhere around, 1,000 pounds to 1,400 pounds max. So really that has become, I'll say, industry gospel, that you pretty much have to design your production systems around moving that amount of weight to keep it safe for your employees. And what we found, especially recently with the move to like electric vehicles and using bigger batteries,
right,
that these loads now have increased from 1,400 pounds to 2,000, 2,500, even beyond that. And what we've been able to do through our product testing design, and we've come up with a set of caster solutions where, we can now move, say, up to 2,500 pounds safely with one person. So still keeping it below that 45 pound max push force.
So, I mean, certainly an increase there in the amount that you can move. And as you mentioned, some things like electric cars are certainly gaining more popularity. So there's more batteries going around and moving around for auto manufacturers. And, it's very interesting, I think, when you said, you set out these standards in place, and then it kind of becomes, like, as you said, the gospel, so to speak. And, it's under this impression that, above 1,400, it's not safe. But you guys are kind of challenging that, I guess, in a sense, by engineering different casters that can be able to help people push these larger loads still in a safe manner and more efficiently. So talk to us a little bit about how that increase then translates to a positive win for companies.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Sure. So besides just keeping their workers safe, so
Right.
we had one example with an automaker that they were making, the hybrid systems. So they were using larger batteries. And when they were designing their system, originally they designed this cart to hold 8 batteries.
Okay.
They used the traditional, well, I'll call it, 8-inch wheel setup with their casters, and they could not get it to pass their safety standards.
Mm.
And they were going to have to, basically, they had to reduce the number of batteries on this cart by half. So they went from 8 batteries to 4. And they were going to have to spend an additional $4 million on additional carts to be able to meet their production quotas.
Oh, wow.
So we happen to have a good relationship with this automaker. We knew about this application, so we were able to suggest, hey, why don't you upgrade your casters and try it again? And they were able to pass their safety standards with 8 batteries. And essentially for, not that much more in terms of caster investment, they were able to save $4 million in their operation.
No, that's pretty, it's pretty amazing. I think that amount of savings just for, swapping out some wheels on the carts is pretty incredible. And I think it's something that maybe is not, like, a company maybe would not necessarily think of that as a solution, like right off the top of their head, right? So
Sure.
When companies are at these points and they're utilizing casters for moving material around, however the case may be, or whatever the material is, a lot of times obviously you have carts that they come stock from wherever it might be, Uline, etc., that they have casters on them. But at what point does a company need to start looking at more of like a custom caster concept, which is your name? So a caster, when do they start to get to that point where, they should be looking at more of like a custom solution or a different type of solution for the casters that they're utilizing?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And unfortunately, the answer is it depends. Because there are so many different applications out there. And, for as many situations as I described, by upgrading casters, you can save a ton of money on capital expense. If you're just pushing a cart around your shop a few times a day, there's a lot of good casters out there that can do that. I'd say where we come into play is more like applications where, you're getting a cart's getting towed around a facility, it's pretty much in use 24 hours a day. Yeah. It's moving these heavier loads. So, I say 1,000 to 1,400 pounds, but really we specialize in loads all the way up to, 100,000 pounds plus. Oh, wow. So that's usually where you want to get somebody like Caster Concepts involved is, when it becomes more than just, hey, I'm putting some casters on a toolbox and I'm going to move it around. That's probably not the right fit for us. Okay. But when it's more continuous use, used multiple shifts a day, getting towed, carrying really heavy loads, that's where you want to start looking at custom designs and things like that.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I appreciate that insight there, because I think, a lot of people, like as I mentioned before, I wouldn't think necessarily that switching out some casters could make a huge difference, but obviously in the example you gave, there's a remarkable savings there that would have cost them a lot, and maybe they would have spent that money and then realized later on that they could have had a cheaper solution, which would have been unfortunate, obviously. But you guys saved them, which is a great thing. So along those lines too, we look at things like the cost savings and then the safety aspect as well. But a lot of what people are dealing with, and, we recently had Modex last month, and, one of the biggest topics there, I think, was, staffing shortages and the ability to get labor and retain labor. So how can making these types of minor tweaks and switches to casters for moving material around, how can that help address some of those staffing issues?
Sure. Another good question. And, I guess along similar lines as increasing the amount of weight you can move safely with one person. So I know with, say, like in the aerospace industry, they have a lot of heavy tools,
Right.
or maybe 2,500 pounds to 7,500 pounds, where they're using, multiple people to position this tool into place.
Mhm.
So again, kind of the same thing by utilizing better caster technology. In our case, it's, with the split wheel, the Torgo design, or, even like our Torgo Extreme, where you're spreading out that load over, I won't necessarily say a larger surface area, but certainly a wider surface area, where you can really make things easier to move.
Mm.
So say, well, I'll give you an example. So
Sure.
at an aerospace manufacturer, so one of the tools they had weighed about 5,000 pounds, and they were using 4 people to move it.
Mm.
So we were able to upgrade casters there, and they were able to get it down to 2 people.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So in today's day and age, where it's tough to find people,
Mhm.
if you don't have to worry about, getting 4 people around to move this tool into place,
Yeah.
That can be a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something interesting in there. You said the placement of the casters, I think, is what I was picking up there, can make a difference in how the weight is, I guess, distributed and moved. So, I mean, how do you guys kind of assess that and help the customer to understand, what their need might be in that aspect?
So again, I'll be evasive on that and say it depends, because
Okay.
it really depends on, what the tool design is or cart design is, and really how they want this tool to move.
Okay.
So, but there are kind of some general guiding principles we use. So usually the larger the wheel diameter is, the easier it's going to be to start rolling.
Okay.
The wider the wheel is, the easier it is to start moving. But then as your casters swivel,
Yeah.
the wider the wheel actually makes it much harder to make those casters swivel, and you'll get a lot of scrubbing across the face of that tire. So it actually increases push forces quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's where we found going to these split wheel designs. So in our case, Torgo, where you have multiple discs that make up the width of that wheel, you reduce that scrubbing by a significant amount. So going wider has the benefit of, when you first start pushing it, then as your casters swivel, you get rid of that scrubbing effect too.
Interesting. And you guys have you mentioned the Torgo in there and the Torgo Extreme as well, but you have multiple different variations of designs. And I was looking at the swivel on swivel as well, which I think is pretty interesting. But I'm curious, the process, and, obviously we're kind of talking about, switching out casters and being able to move more material with less manpower and staffing. And, it's all part of continuous improvement and making sure that things are, getting better, more efficient, and easier for the worker as well. So I'm curious, internally for Caster Concepts, coming up with, I guess, new caster concepts, I guess I'll say, and designs. It seems like a wheel is round, right? So how do you guys look at these casters and start to innovate and come up with different ways to look at the caster itself and have them address some of the issues or give different functionality, as you were kind of mentioning in there with the split wheels of the Torgo?
Typically, it all starts, with a customer problem, or things that we're hearing out in the industry that other manufacturers are struggling with in terms of material handling. And from there, we're able to bring that back to our team of engineers. We're blessed to have, I think, 6 engineers on staff. So, typically when we bring back those problems, that's when our engineering team goes to work looking at, what have we done in the past? What have we seen other people do? What technologies do we know work better for certain things? And then basically just doing R&D, right?
Right.
So it's trying different solutions, doing the test, see the results, and then, adjust from there.
Interesting.
So in our case too, we also process our own polyurethane for our tires. Okay. So in that case, as new urethanes are released, it's not like we're set on, well, we only process these 4 materials. We're constantly testing new materials because, they have different rebounds and tear strengths and other properties that improve rollability.
Yeah.
So we're always on the lookout for kind of that next best thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting, and I think that you guys, obviously, being in business for 37 years, you guys know what you're doing. But it's interesting to see how these things kind of develop and how new innovations come into play for these types of things. I think, so much of the industry right now, like the buzz is around, innovation and robotics and all these different things. But, there's still our core tools that we need to use, which include casters, right? We need to move things around, and to see that innovation and the fact that you guys are still able to come up with new ideas and new designs to be able to address customer issues, I think is a great thing. So I'm interested to hear more about, because the swivel on swivel really kind of caught my attention on your website. I watched a little video there, and it's like a dual swivel, I guess is the best way to describe it. But how did that idea kind of come about, and talk to us about kind of the benefits of the swivel on swivel?
Sure. So, as you were mentioning, new technologies that come out, and, we've certainly seen a trend toward more automation within facilities, especially around like automated guided vehicles and automated guided carts. Mm-hmm. And that's really what drove this swivel on swivel technology. Okay. So as these, I'll call them AGVs, as they were being designed to do kind of more difficult maneuvers. So, a difficult maneuver for an AGV might be pulling down a very tight aisle, picking something up or having something loaded on, and then backing straight up, or straight back out of the aisle. So that's actually a very tough maneuver, because the casters that help support the load on an AGV all try to swivel, and they end up fighting each other. And what we call it the castering effect. So essentially you can't go straight forward and straight back. You actually have to kind of shimmy to the side a little bit to allow the casters to move, which then has the effect of, it can either throw the AGV offline, or it requires a tremendous amount of more power through the drive wheel to be able to power through that. So as we came across these situations where these AGV manufacturers were saying, hey, we can't perform this maneuver, or we can't turn the way we thought we were going to be able to turn, we said, well, how can we reduce that castering effect? And, you mentioned the swivel on swivel. It does have two swivel sections that are offset. So basically what that allows, it gives you kind of 2 degrees of freedom there. Yeah. So instead of, all 4 casters trying to fight each other as they swivel around as this thing reverses direction, that second degree of freedom kind of breaks that, and I won't say eliminates the castering effect, but significantly reduces it, where now you can use less power on your drive wheel, which then saves battery life and actually allows you to perform that back and forth maneuver.
Very interesting. Yeah. I was looking at the video on the website. Is pretty interesting. At the close-up of how it actually kind of, I guess, almost you're pushing against the way it wants to, I guess, naturally go, in a sense. But the second swivel allows it to easily just go. So you reduce the amount of force that I guess you're using to push, which I think is really, really smart. So it's very cool to see that. Yeah. And, how I guess are some of the, I'm curious, when you implement some of these, whether it's the Twergo or the swivel on swivel or whatever other solution you guys may implement at customers, what is some of the, I guess, feedback and reaction from the employees on the floor, who are the ones who are actually moving the material around from, what they were doing previously versus, now with the newer casters in place?
Sure. We probably get the most feedback from Twergo or Twergo Extreme, just because they're used in, mainly manually moved operations. So that's where you get the most feedback from employees actually doing the work. And, probably one of the more interesting ones that I heard was, man, once we put these Twergos on, the carts roll so easy. Sometimes we have problems with the carts just rolling away because our floors aren't flat.
So you guys got to partner with a flooring company, right? And have them come in
exactly.
And smooth it out.
Exactly. Yeah. So then they're coming back asking for brakes when they never needed brakes before.
It's very interesting, but I mean, it's certainly a testament to, just how much easier guiding these carts can now be, which I think is a huge thing. And I don't think, obviously as you're doing the same type of work every single day for a long time, and you're pushing the same, whether it's a cart or a dolly or whatever the case may be, that you're pushing around to move the material that you work with. You may not realize like how much extra work you're actually doing, because it just becomes the normal, and that's the way it is, and maybe you haven't felt anything that moves smoother, as you said. So it's pretty interesting to see that kind of, I guess, that eye-opening experience, I'm sure, when these new casters are implemented, and like you said, the cart just kind of takes off on its own, right?
Yeah, and I mean that it's always nice when you get that type of feedback too, of especially when companies have had injuries around, back issues and shoulder issues and things like that. And then, just by a small upgrade to their casters, now all of a sudden their employees are like, man, this job is way easier. And I don't dread doing this every day. That there's a sense of pride in that, and it makes you feel good about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. And obviously something that, we may think is a small thing, these casters, obviously, as we've demonstrated here, and Doug, as you've kind of spoken to, can make a huge impact on not only the organization as a whole from a cost savings perspective, but also on the employees themselves and their well-being and just their overall work-life healthiness and being able to do their job more efficiently in a safer manner, I think is really important. So I'm happy that you could come on this show and help us to highlight this and talk about what you guys do at Caster Concepts and how you kind of improve the workplace for everyone. So if people want to find out more information about Caster Concepts, how can they do that?
Well, you can go to our website. So we actually just launched a new website last Friday. So www.casterconcepts.com. We have a wealth of information on there. So if you're just interested in learning more about casters, we have tons of videos, tons of case studies, tons of blogs, and we're adding more every month. So we like to think of that as a great learning center if people just want to know more about how to move things better.
All right, great. And we'll put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find Caster Concepts. And we'll put Doug's information there too for LinkedIn, so you can connect with him if you have any questions regarding casters. So Doug, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.